Hello and welcome to episode 3 of VISTA Table Talks. I'm Kim Chin, the Assistant National Director of the VISTA program, and this month we are bringing together 3 VISTAs from Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago in alignment with Youth Violence Prevention Week to discuss how sports offers an outlet for youth and provides a safe space for youth to build relationships with peers, adults, and their community. At Up2Us Sports, we do recognize and stand with communities who are continuously experiencing violence for simply living. This conversation is meant to highlight sports and their place in providing a positive, safe outlet for youth in their communities. Leading our conversation this month is Krystal Harris, the Up2Us Sports Sports-Based Youth Development Program Manager in Los Angeles. We are so excited to welcome her and our panelists for this conversation, as they all have a lot of information and knowledge in this space. So I am going to kick it over to Krystal to get the conversation started.
Thank you very much, Kim. Hi, my name is Krystal Harris. As Kim has said, I am the Up2Us SBYD Project Manager out in Los Angeles, California. I train coaches in sports-based youth development, and I also train law enforcement and trauma-informed coaching. And I want to give a chance for the panelists here to introduce themselves. You can just say your name and the organization you're with, and then we can start the conversation and you can talk more about your organization. I'm going to go with the way my screen is looking. So we're going to go to Robin first. So if you don't mind introducing yourself.
As Krystal has said, I'm Robin Taylor. I work for Up2Us Sports as a VISTA for AmeriCorps.
Next on my screen is Chantal.
Hi, I'm Chantel. I'm out here in California and I'm a AmeriCorps VISTA, and I founded Bridge to Skate organization. And our largest program is in Compton.
Awesome. And right on over to Ray.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ray Mendez, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA with Up2Us Sports via the Harold Hunter Foundation. And the Harold Hunter Foundation is New York City's oldest, at 15 years now, longest running nonprofit organization serving the skateboard population here in NYC.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining. We're going to dive right in. The conversation here is surrounded around sports as a violence prevention tool. So I want to just go ahead and jump into the questions. So the first question is, we all know that we're using sports currently as a vehicle for violence prevention. And it starts with education and bringing knowledge to the consequences of violent crimes and risky behaviors. So how does your organization teach your youth and your kids about anti-violence through sports?
I guess I'll start. So we here, we've been doing this for a long time. I think actually this is our 16th year. COVID was sort of our blackout year, as it was for pretty much almost everybody. You know, we work with a lot of kids that come from challenging circumstances, right? And so by way of that, there are components of violence, unfortunately, built into that stuff, unfortunately. So, you know, a lot of the population that we serve is that, you know, that term at risk, right? At risk youth. The nice thing about the skate population we talked about this the other day about it being like an individual sport, but it's really centered around community. So there's a really big community component in what it is that we do. I mean real community, like real thread, real friendships. And so by way of that, there's sort of a natural component of anti-violence, kind of. There is violence still in the community because, you know, kids are exposed to that, but because of the sport and because of being part of the population and the culture of skate, it sort of offsets a lot of the violence, the violent factors with that. And so, and I hate to use the O word, organically, but organically, that is something that just happens in our population, and it's really lovely to see. So just by way of them being a skater or being in the community, it does offset some of the factors of violence.
Yeah, I'm going to go off of what Ray just said. You know, when you learn how to skateboard, there's so many different types of skateboarding that all of them are accepting. And I think that you know, because of that, people are just very accepted in our community. And if you look at, you know, even when I go to the skate park, my friends at the skate park are 60 and 12 and girls and boys and transsexuals and, you know, and everybody just gets along. And so I really do think that we're a unique sport in that aspect. But overall, I would say that sports in general teach kids a lot of self-confidence. You know, if you have the confidence to learn how to do a sport, then you feel good about yourself and you don't want to participate in bad things. And, you know, you might even get a dream out of it. Like if you want to be a pro skateboarder, you can't go rob the house next door, even if they have the best new PlayStation available, you know? So I think that that really also just directs kids in the right area.
Yeah, I totally agree. But I don't deal with any skateboards. So, but as a former coach, dealing with soccer and everything, a lot of my cluster in the past was dealing with CPS, the Chicago Public Schools, and some of our students live in those urban areas, so they was very disfortunate in a lot of areas. So what you was talking about, Chantel, about they don't want to participate in bad things like go stealing or stuff like that. Some of my students didn't have food, so they want to go to the grocery store and had to like shoplift and get groceries for their family because their parents wasn't able to do it. But when it come down to the sport part, they learn that, yeah, they can't do that because they're not going to exceed to the next level inside their life and stuff like that, because they're going to be hindering, probably going to jail or probably getting a lot of consequences and stuff like that. But with the sport, it built a family, and it also built a safe space for them to come to the coach like me and also my assistant coach, like, hey, I don't have food in my house, and the food here and the school is really terrible, but it's not enough that I can actually take with me to like bring it home to my family or my sister, my brothers and stuff like that. So with the school, what we have done was created a food drive for them that's dealing with the sport. So it was either with the soccer program or with the basketball program and stuff like that. So they can have that space to support their family and also participate inside that sport, because it's very hard to play a sport if you don't have any nutrients in your body. And they knew that was the biggest thing inside their life, and they loved the sport, what they was playing. So, yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I actually wanted to kind of continue off of what you were speaking of, Robin, about experiences and making a safe space for your youth. Like you mentioned, one of your youth speaking about having to do their necessary means to make sure their family is fed properly. I want to hear from the other organizations also and how your organizations help youth build their own voices and process their experience that they're experiencing every day, whether it be food security or violence, possibly in the home, unfortunately, or in school or bullying. How does your organization help support the youth build their experience and their voice and being able to talk about these things? And
Well, I think
sorry.
Oh, sorry. I think creating an environment where the kids can just be kids is really important. And, you know, working in Compton, they have constant, you know, daily lures of drugs and gangs. And, you know, even like around where our after school program is, there's so much going on there, and the kids get robbed all the time. There's shootings, like, you know, I mean, even the skate park there's been a couple shootings, you know, last month there. And so it's just really not like a safe place. And it's really crazy to see the transformation when I'm hanging out with the kids at the skate park, and then how different they act when I bring them to the after school program, because they can be a kid for the first time. In our after school program, we actually have collaborated with the sheriff department on a facility. So we do have a deputy on site at all times, which is really pretty unique, I would say, because the deputies are, you know, really getting to know the kids, and the kids really, they trust them. And but with that being said, it's a gated area and the kids can just be kids. And then even inside of that, like a lot of times we just separate the kids depending on, a lot of times for the females to feel comfortable, they only want to skate with other girls, and that's understandable. And so we give them their own little zone, and then we give all of the beginners their own little zone, and the advanced kids get their own little zone. So even amongst, inside our facility, we make sure that everybody can just excel in, in their own space. And I feel like just skateboarding in general is really open and really open to individuality. So, having your own voice and your own style and everything, I think comes naturally or organically with our sport.
Yeah, sorry, I'm a like marketing and branding person by trade, so like some of those words are, the overused words or whatever, so I put quotation marks around them, but it is, genuine, like authentic outcomes, right? Like with the stuff that we're doing, that's really great to see. I wanted to share with you guys with that. I mean, we deal with that, like violence and instances, for example, we a couple months ago, we participated in help. What we're trying to do now is, as an organization, because Harold Hunter Foundation's been so rooted in the community, is we're sort of taking a step back. We have a little bit of a new approach, which I really like. And instead of us like doing these things, we're working to empower the community to do them, right? So we've had instances where skaters have come to us and say, hey, we want to do this like all girls skate event, like the Bronx Girls Skate Jam, or hey, we want to do this, the one that I'm referring to now is called Skater Intervention, right? So it was an it's not a typical like skate event. Yes, there was skating, but there was discussion and open forum about talking about violence, about talking about, things that have happened in the community, and being able to provide a safe space to have those conversations. So that was one that we did that I really like, that we want to redo, called Skater Intervention. We are also working preventatively, like long-term, on like bigger picture things, like for example, workforce readiness programs, where we're finding, doing training and doing job placement with kids and stuff like that, and showing them, really for me, it's like a north, right? It's like, here's the north and this is the path that we can get to, and these are the steps that we're going to take to do that. And one of the things that we've done this year that I think is really remarkable is we've been able to actually hire a social worker. So the Harold Hunter Foundation now has a social worker that works with our population, and is a person of color, is a skater, is really awesome and super smart, obviously. And so the fact that we now have like the ability to like provide these deeper resources is really amazing. And I can't wait to see what we're going to do coming out of COVID, and we've already got a lot of great momentum. So this next coming year is really exciting for us.
That's really good. Really good.
Yeah, I also think that it's really important to, like, you never know who kids are going to attach to and like see as, a positive role model in their lives. So like, with us, like, and I'm sure Harold Hunter is really similar, we try to introduce our kids to as many different types of people as possible. Like, sometimes it has nothing to do with skateboarding, and as many experiences, we try to do bi-monthly outings with our youth where we bring them to different museums, or sometimes it's skate parks, but not always. And but like even to the beach, like all of our youth grew up in LA, but they've never seen the ocean before. And I think that like creating those experiences and exposing them to different different things and places and people really helps create individuality and I don't know, and something to look up to. Even one time I like brought them to the neighborhood that I live in, and they're like, oh my God, like you live on both sides, like you have trees on both sides of the street. And I'm like, okay, at your absolute worst, you could have this. Like, you could work at McDonald's and you can have this. But it's just, they've never lived in a neighborhood like me, they've never seen that as an option. And so giving them that exposure, and it might create a dream that they didn't know that they could have, Yeah.
I wanted just to add something to that. I mean, we're really big on, and me personally, is transformative experiences. So when we talk about like prevention, I feel that prevention, starts with, and we talked about a little last time too, changing mindsets, right? And I think that through sport, and the power that sport has is that it has the ability to change mindsets entirely. Me personally, as a youth, like I'm a kid from the Bronx, I played rugby in high school. Like not a lot, nobody in the Bronx plays rugby. So, but it was something that was new, it was different, and it was transformative for me in that sense, because I got to see a whole different world that I wouldn't have seen otherwise. And that was through sport. And then when I started doing skateboard, same thing there. So for us, transformative, experiences are super, super important. One of the things that we do every year is we take kids to skate camp to Woodward, which, I describe as Disney World for people on wheels. And, even just them being in that environment for a week of the year, it can be a very, very life-changing experience for them.
Yeah, it's funny that you say transformative or another experience, because I grew up with one of these youth that you all actually teach in your programs, or you're mentoring your programs. I was actually one of those youth in those communities. So I was the same way. I joined golf in the community I was in, where like no one's playing golf, and I was like, why don't I just try this instead of like basketball, or they wouldn't let me play football. So that's a whole different conversation there.
I wanted to play football too when I was
right.
young.
Yeah, they wouldn't let me. But yeah, those different experiences like you did with rugby was like, it opened my mind to like a whole new world outside of the community that I'm constantly seeing, with the constant violence or the constant trauma that I'm constantly seeing every day. So I definitely understand that. I do want to point, kind of shift to our current situation that's happening is COVID, and something that Ray said regarding changing mindset, because the programs of sports and violence prevention tools is kind of like a changing mindset, and kind of, I don't want to use the word reprogramming, but letting them know there's other options. Now with COVID happening, have you seen any changes to the C's that you've instilled in your youth and the progress that you've made? Have you seen any challenges because of COVID with any of these in your programs?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, COVID was pretty much the worst thing that could happen to a youth from a low socioeconomic community. I mean, for the youth that we work with, the worst place that they could be is home, and all of a sudden they're stuck there. So like my experiences of seeing them recently, they're just completely depleted, and emotionally, physically, everything. It's really, really, it's going to take a lot to build them back up. And we've been really lucky because through the entire pandemic, like our sport of choice has been an individual sport. So they could still participate, and they could do that alone. And pretty much all of them have, a little spot of pavement nearby. So they could still practice. But like Ray was saying, even though skateboarding is an individual sport, it's still very family oriented. And I think that anybody being alone that much, you're not as motivated to progress. And we've done a lot like with, online contests and things like that. But unfortunately, with like all of the online stuff, it leaves out a huge portion of people and kids. And so that's been really challenging. And we've done quite a bit with like checking in on them and everything, but it's really like, it's just really sad. And I can't wait to see the end of the tunnel and get back to normalcy.
I totally agree with you on that, Chantel, because our coaches are having a big, giant struggle because they used to that physical activity. They used to going out. They used to being outside and being with their friends and hanging out. And like you said, being at home some of our students is very extremely terrible because they're not in a positive home. There's physical violence, there's verbal violence. It just so many things that's going on. And as a coach, I can't go there and rescue them. I can't protect them. I can't do none of those things. And it hurts my heart, and it hurts like the rest of my coaches that we can't do anything besides being on the screen like we are now and saying you can push through it, you can like hang in there. But those words only could go so far. But having that positivity and letting them know that, yeah, this is a really tough time, and I understand that this is a tough time, but we can get through this. And some of our students is holding on to that. They holding on to that normalcy that we're going to get back to. And I pray to God that we at least go somewhat back to it so our students can have that outlet. Because some of them deal with anger problems and they need that sport to punch a basketball, do a skateboard trick or two, play soccer, and like all those little things. Sadly, I wasn't good at sports, so my body was the injury. So you can say I was the punching bag. But anyway, though our students need this, and the pandemic was a really giant hit, not only for the family who is struggling to monitor like where is my kids going to be okay if I go to work and stuff, but the children itself is having a really big hard time. And some people just overlook that. They like they home, they should be good. No, it's not true. It's not true. Some of our students is in a well put home, and almost like 90% of other students are not. And those are students that we need to look out for and care for and making sure they're okay. So we check in with them like every single day to make sure all is well with them.
I always appreciate Robin's sense of humor talking about some pretty serious matters. But when just talking about COVID, I think we have to be really, really honest with ourselves, like us as people that work in the landscape of sport, and especially with the youth. We have to be really honest with ourselves with the fact that there's this. COVID sucked for everybody, right? But what I noticed pretty early on into the last year, the midway point of the pandemic, is that in terms of youth and organized sport, there were sports happening, right? Last summer, there was baseball happening. There was ice hockey happening. There were a lot of opportunities for youth of families of means that in essence could pay for those activities to happen. So if you, for lack of a better term, pay to play, if you could afford to pay to play, there were things for young people to do. And I think that, what COVID did clearly is exacerbate a lot of these situations for the children that come from more socioeconomically challenged backgrounds, because up until now, a lot of those programs are still not running, right? And so there's a lot of lost opportunity there for those kids where they maybe had some resources that were provided by nonprofits or CBOs, community-based organizations that were trying to fill a need, right, in communities, but COVID either knocked them out or paused what they were doing. And so the fact that it exacerbated a situation that was already bad and made it even worse. And in some instances, I mean, we have to be honest that we're still on our way to recovery with some of that stuff, like I'm we're just now getting back into schools, teaching skate sports in schools. And I see the difference. I see the level of athleticism of our students, and it's dropped significantly because they pretty much have been couch potatoes for like a whole year, for lack of a better term. And so yeah, it's still a big concern, the landscape of what COVID had and the impact that it's had in the sports community.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. Let's kind of move a little bit. Now we talked about the biggest challenges, current challenges is COVID. Another challenge we talked about is possibly violence or gangs trying to commute from home to your service. The other challenges we talked about is the violence that your youth may be facing coming from their home to your organization. What are some other challenges that you see through your organization and your youth? And I kind of want to touch a little bit on, if you can, a little bit on what Ray said regarding pay to play, because some of your youth may be coming from those avenues or those areas where unfortunately pay to play, which is like in sports in general, is a big thing. And this is why your organizations exist sometimes, is because some of these families can't afford the pay to play. So what other challenges do you notice and barriers that you notice with the youth that you serve?
I mean, for us, I would say another barrier is gender roles. We have a large Hispanic population, and you know, historically the females just don't participate in sports, and you know, we see it a lot more in our like international programs, but it happens in Compton pretty much just as much. And so to get the girls, you know, to like want to participate is a challenge. But I think that, well, obviously everybody can agree that sports are hugely beneficial for everybody. And the one really cool thing about skateboarding is that you can do it at your own pace. And we have a lot of kids that are, I would say they don't have the typical body of somebody that would be like good at like a team sport. They'd probably get chosen last. And that comes like, also like, just to let you know, I was cut from like every team sport I ever played on. I was horrible at them, which is why I started skateboarding. And so it's really cool to be able to see them progress and you know, have a sport. And but that's been a challenge, and more so like with the parents as well. Like if the parents are involved, like they'll come to the program and they'll, you know, yell at their kid for doing, you know, skateboarding, which is really crazy. And then also just like equipment. And so how we've kind of navigated around that is now we have like shoe libraries. The kids, when they come in their sandals, they can borrow a pair of shoes for the day. And we have, you know, a skateboard library where they can borrow a skateboard and helmets and pads if they want them. And so there's ways to navigate around that, but the gender roles, it's really like ingrained in, you know, historical, I mean, history, I guess, but.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. What I wanted to comment about that too, and I've been doing a lot of homework on this, is like parent-child engagement, right? And so the cool thing that I think about with skate sports is that kids can participate with their parents, right? Whereas I think a lot of other sports, and yeah, you can obviously play basketball and football, all other sports with your kids, but I think that's a cool component about the action sports and skate sports. But in general, I think parent-child engagement through sport is a great way to address like those underlying issues of maybe domestic violence and things like that, just nurturing relationships and connectivity in general with your children. I have some cool homework that I've been doing that I'll share with you all separately about that. But I think that getting kids and parents together out to play sports is a huge benefit and a good way to tackle, especially any sort of like domestic violence in issues.
It's really like sad to see, that a lot of times the kids that have the most money and the most access to facilities and equipment usually are the kids that succeed the most. And up until like recently, skateboarding hasn't really been like that. But now you see, like there's little kids that are 3 years old and crushing it at skateboarding. And like they didn't naturally become a good skateboarder, they had somebody right there holding their hand all along. And so that's kind of, I don't know, I've always rooted for the underdog in life, and it's trying to like even that playing ground and bring the same opportunities to the youth that we work with, that the youth from other neighborhoods might have. And like things like Woodward, I know that Harold Hunter sends a lot of kids to Woodward, and we try to send a group there every year. And but like there's kids from Calabasas that go there for the entire summer, and of course they're going to become a great skateboarder if all they have to do is focus on just skateboarding and fun for the whole summer. And a lot of our youth, they have to, like, once they become an age that they can work, they might have to work, or they have to look after their younger siblings, and they can't just focus on fun. And so how can we navigate around that and create this same opportunities?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Because a lot of students in our programs, they have a lot of responsibilities. Even some of my kids who are just like turned 10 years old, they have like 3 or 4 little brothers and sisters that they have to care for because their parents are at work, and they have to stop going to the sport program because they got to take their little sister or their little brother back home. They got to clean up the house. They got to fix food for their little sisters and little brothers and stuff. So when it comes down to those things, how do we work around that? Cool. Tell me as a coach that you need to do this. I'll let you come in late. You can still have your play. You can still do what you need to do to your parent and arrives at your house. Because it's killing 2 birds in 1 stone. They still doing what they supposed to be doing, so they won't get chastised by their parent. And then also getting that little outlet and still having fun with me, and just having a ball, even though I can't play that sport, whatever it is. But it's just really hard for a lot of our students because of that area. And a lot of our students are coming from urban areas too, and some of their places that have the basketball courts or the tennis courts and stuff like that, they don't have the basketball hoops. They don't have the tennis court, not the court, but the tennis. I know what I'm saying. The
nets.
The net. They don't have that in their area. I'm like, it's there, but they don't have the equipment there. And as both of you have touch on it, they don't have the finance for it either. They just can't go to the store and purchase a net or a hoop and get their own basketball and stuff. Some of them have to make their own equipment, and that shows how smart and intelligent and how they can pivot inside their own life to even think like, well, I can't buy a basketball, but I got a big roll of tape and I could just roll it all up and bam, there's my basketball, there's my soccer ball, there's my football and stuff like that. But those are some of the things that our students are struggling with. And when having that safe space as far as sport or that facility is a great hands-on, and they don't have to pay for it. But that's our problem. We don't we want them to pay for it because we need the funding and everything, but that's also hindering our students because their parents don't always have the finance for it. And the students, of course, don't have the finance because they're not old enough to even have a job and stuff. And if they do, they can't really participate in the sport because they're working. So it becomes like a double-edged sword. And how can we help them if we're not giving them the opportunity to help them? So little things that we have to do is we have to make our programs free. We have to give those resources that Chantel was talking about. Like if you don't have the shoes, okay, well, in this area, we have shoes, you can borrow those so you can play. So those things are really important inside our sports, inside our communities and stuff.
I've got to say though, real quick, that I love the innovation that you see when kids don't have what they want. And, you know, we've had like, even with our skateboard facility that we have in Compton, we didn't have like certain features that the kids wanted, but we had like a stack of wood and all these like things laying around. And so the kids like made their own features. And I don't know, it probably wasn't the most safe, but it was definitely the coolest features we've had. I'll send you a picture, Ray.
I'm sure.
No, those things are good because when they make it their own, and they can put their own little twist to it. Because some of our kids, when they made their own like ball and stuff, we had like different color like duct tape and stuff. Some had one in like red and green. Some had one in that like army color type of thing. So they made it their own, and it was more beneficial because they wanted to play that ball more than the real ball that we would get from the store and stuff. So that was more tangible than anything else.
Yeah, the innovation of sport.
One thing that I wanted to comment on that is it is why I think like not inventing, but nurturing pathways through sports. And you know, one of the things that we're doing in terms of like the career and like workforce readiness stuff, and more importantly, certainly for me, but for us, like creative careers. The action sports are very creative by nature, very content driven. Everybody's shooting themselves, photos, videos, you know, with social media, obviously what it is nowadays. And so, you know, creating pathways potentially in those areas of interest, right? So like, no matter what sport you play, you know, not everybody's going to be a professional, but you could be a coach, or you could start a brand, or you could do all of these other things related to your passion, right? And that's something for me that I always stress is, and that's the beautiful thing wrapped around sport, is that it's very tethered to passion, because no matter what sport you play, the kids are like passionate about it, right? And it's a driver for them. And so, you know, introducing pathways for them to potentially make a living in that industry, whatever that sport is, I think is also very, very important.
Yeah, I think it's especially in this age, currently the youth are dealing with, you know, violence prevention, and we're trying to use sports as a tool for violent prevention. And then of course COVID hit, and these public spaces that Robin was speaking about, like the basketball nets and the tennis nets, are removed, or the skate parks are closed in Los Angeles. They can't use these public spaces. So I love hearing about the innovation of the youth on how to be innovative, on how to still try to use sports as a tool of violent prevention, or try to get into a more creative avenue when it comes to maybe some social media or some videography and stuff like that, because these public spaces were completely closed down because of COVID. So I love hearing about the innovativeness of creating the ball and maybe creating your own hoop, or finding blocks of wood to like use as like some things to jump off of skateboarding because the parks are closed. Trust me, I've been to a couple of skate parks and a lot of holes were cut.
No.
A lot of holes were cut to get in, and I saw. And so it's like, you know what, I understand. Like, you got to get out of the house and you got to do what you got to do. But I want to wrap something around really quick. I know getting off this topic is and going to the gender roles that Chantal had brought up. And I wanted to know, there's always that dynamic between the female and the male athlete. And I want to know, has the violence in the community impacted either the female athlete more or the male athlete more? So can you speak a little bit more about that in your programs?
Well, I think in general, like, of course, it's impacted the female more. Just with the nature of, I mean, I guess for like females, it would be a lot scarier to participate in sports. Mostly, like, even when I go to the skate park sometimes and there's, you know, everybody there is a male, you're like, ooh, like, do I try to like skate this feature that all of these men are skating right now? And you're like, okay, let's do it, you know? But like, I'm also like, I've been skating for so long now that I stopped caring. But like, for somebody that's just beginning to participate, that would be a really difficult thing to do. And then there's also so many, I guess, like in the areas that we're working in, there's just the aspect of violence as well. And a lot of times going to like a park is, you know, where like the Compton skate park is, that is gang territory. And so if you're a female and you're going there alone, that could be really scary. And it might just be easier to stay home and not participate and you're safe. So that's really sad. But then on the other end of things, for men, you know, they, like, the gangs try to recruit men. And so that would be, you know, also very, very difficult and challenging. So I think that, I don't know, being a female, I would think of, I know I'm rooting on the girls, but like, I think that there's definitely challenges for both.
Yeah, I've noticed that here. I mean, I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite events that we help, I guess, power or support or drive. Last year was the Bronx Girls Skate event. It's these two young ladies, Mel and Kava, here, locals to the South Bronx, very active in the skate community. And they wanted to do something in their community at a local skate park here in the South Bronx, 157 River Avenue, and there is some violence there locally and in the park itself, very like male centric, and certainly some like male toxicity there with that. The wonderful thing that came out of that was that through the Bronx Girls Skate event, that one event sort of set off, from what I can tell, a ripple effect, and it gave, it cemented the girls, the females' place in the park as a force. And since then, it's been a consistent thing where there's a lot more of the ladies coming out to skate and feeling a little bit more safe, to be honest, as a term, like, because some of the comments that we got is that a lot of them wouldn't go there because of the factors that Chantal, you know, mentioned. It's just a bunch of dudes when you show up somewhere. And so, you know, you as a female, maybe a lone female, do you want to inject yourself into that environment? We heard a lot of that, but I guess the good news is that, you know, doing that stuff and activating the community really had a positive outcome in the end. And that's a really great thing to see.
Yeah. I mean, overall, females are we just struggling. Even in the real professional, we just struggling. So, but to answer your question, Krystal, it overall looking, it's the females. Sadly, we have to like point that out. And even though it's very known that the females are struggling, but when you think about sports was generally focused on male. You can't play this, you gotta be home, you gotta cook, do cheerleading. Now they want to consider cheerleading as a sport. I really don't think so, but that's a whole different topic for a whole different day. But females are just struggling completely when it comes down to this area, like completely. If you're not good enough, don't even tend to even go, because the male is gonna like talk or dog you out from the floor to the ceiling. And if you don't have no type of inch of a skill like me, don't even tempt, don't go. Like just don't go. But then again, you want them to go because they need to build up their confidence. You want to build that stamina. So you could be like me and persevere, and then you could later be a coach who can teach the sport. So that goes back to what Ray is saying, that you don't always have to stick with the playing part. You can do other avenues of that sport. So it's a struggle for us females. I'm sorry. I'm with Chantel, rooting for the females. Gotta root for them.
But with that being said, I think that there's, there's a lot of progression, mostly with like all of the like contest series. So like Vans committed to paying the females the same amount in skateboarding as the males. And so as soon as, all of these companies have committed to doing the same for girls as they do for men, or women as they do for men, I really think that like men start seeing female sports a little bit more seriously. Like even like I walked into like one of my friend's houses the other day, and he was watching a female basketball game on TV. And in all, like, it's one of my best friends, and all of the times that I've walked into his house, I've never seen him watch a female basketball game, but all of a sudden they're playing the female basketball game. So if they put it on TV, people might pay attention, but up until recently, they didn't even give people the option to pay attention. So I think that like, committing to paying a similar prize purse and playing the WNBA at a prime time, slot, I think that like doing all of those things will allow for, females to feel better about, going and participating and like, look, I'm supposed to be here. I need to train. I need to, how am I supposed to get better? Like, just because you're here doesn't mean I shouldn't be. I deserve it just as much.
Exactly. But it is also really sad that as a female, we have to work like 50 times more compared to a male, just to be in the same level. And that's like the downer part as a female, in my opinion, in all sports. Like football, as both of you two know, Krystal and Chantel, y'all couldn't play football because y'all wanted to play it. But now female can play football. But you gotta, like I said before, you gotta be on your game when you need to play these sports, because they're really gonna be like, well, you can't play because you were a girl. Try again next time. So you just, as a female, you gotta be, it's a shame though, you really have to be on top of your stuff just to play that one particular sport. But if I was like 6'2", as a male, they'd be like, oh, you can play the sport basketball, just stand right here and just put it in. If I was 6'2" as a female, they'd be like, can you really catch the ball to put it in? Can you grasp it? But it just so many avenues as a female where we have to go through just to be on the same level as a male. And not saying that a male is not struggling either. He is too, but we ain't focusing on that right now.
And I'm just going to quickly say that, like, I think that the skateboarding community has actually done a really good job. And obviously they can do more, but being really accepting to the trans community and really welcoming. And there's a lot of like trans skater meetups and things like that, which I haven't really seen in like other sports. And maybe I don't know if it's just because I haven't like searched as hard, but I think that will be an important thing to look into for the future. Like we need to we need to find a safe space for not only females, but trans people as well.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna comment on too, Chantel. Like in this whole, I mean, let's face it, we're living in a landscape of DEI, right? It's the diversity, equity, and inclusion landscape. And some of that stuff is not necessarily authentic, right? It's like brands figuring out ways to like pivot off of marketing to develop these like inclusion and DEI things. But that's an interesting thing. For me, it's sports place in that conversation is super important. And I do agree with Chantel, like the action sports has made some strides in terms of inclusivity, right? But you know, diversity, right? Like changing our overall population, the equity thing. Why do female athletes don't get paid as much as their counterparts as male? And for me, inclusivity is like bringing people, you know, into the industry too, right? That's something that we're working on. It's not just, oh, you're just an athlete, you stay over here, athlete. Like, no, like bring you into the business side of it so you can learn how to make a career and create a life path for yourself in the sport, not just actually doing the sport, right? So yeah, there's a lot to talk about with all that stuff. I can go on and on about it. Robin, I think we can have that conversation about that ongoing, all of us. But yeah, I think that's really important in terms of like the you know, the leveling the playing field, right? That's the term that people use, right? And so like actually really doing that.
I will say that there's progression happening, and I'm very proud of the progression that is happening, but we can always do more. So I want to thank you all. We're going to wrap this up. I want to thank you all for first taking the time out of your day to talk about this topic of sports as a tool for violence prevention. And then I also want to personally thank you as one of the former youth that you are currently working with, as a personal thank you to giving your time and your dedication to work with the youth that you're working with. I know sometimes it doesn't seem like what you're doing is working, but as one that's grown up and now I'm a full adult, functioning adult, it is working. So personally, I want to thank you so much.
Thank you.